Welcome to KNITLIB, the podcast. My name is Susan. For a minute there, I almost forgot my name. And this is my podcast that is all about knitting and crafting and art and libraries and books and whatever else I feel like talking about. If you're a returning viewer, thanks so much for coming and checking out the podcast. If you're a new viewer, welcome, and I hope that you find something here that you can connect with. As always, I'm coming to you from my little apartment I share with my husband Ryan, and in Calgary, Alberta, where I'm coming to you from. And today it is a Monday afternoon. It's Monday morning, and it is finally not sweltering hot outside, and yeah, I thought it was, considering this is my only day off this week, I thought it would be a good time to record a podcast. I have a jam-packed episode for you today. I have lots of things that I want to share with you, and yeah, I think there's no better way than to just get started. Right off the bat, I want to talk about the warm weather cowl. That will be ending on September the 1st. So we have only a couple of more weeks for you to add your projects to the Instagram hashtag. So it's hashtag warm weather cowl, and all of your projects, whether they're in progress or finished, are all going into there. So the more times you tag that hashtag, that's weird, the more chances you will have to win. So I'm going to be pulling a couple of random winners from there. And I haven't quite decided on the prizes for that yet, but I have a feeling it might be some hand-dyed yarn by me, and maybe a couple of enamel pins or something like that. I haven't quite decided. Yes, so check out the warm weather cowl. There is more information down in the description box, where you're also going to find all of the show notes. That's all going to be down there too. And yeah, so I hope you're taking part. What else do I need to tell you right off the bat? I think we're good. I think that's all I need to tell you. Onward and upward to the knitting. We're going to talk about the knitting. I have so much knitting I want to share with you. I have a couple of finished objects, and then I also have some works in progress I want to share. And plus I have some other crafty things I want to share with you as well. And then towards the end of this episode, I'm going to show a limited amount of footage I have from our trip to Edmonton, and I'll talk a little bit about our trip to Edmonton. And yeah, so settle in, get comfy, and yeah, we're going to get into the knitting. So the first finished object was a half finished object in the last episode, and it is my pair of Jinx vanilla socks. And here we go. I haven't sewn in any ends because I'm lazy, but here we are. Yay! I have finished these socks. They're knit in Olann sock and the colorway Jinx, and it's this really lovely kind of mottled, let me hold it steady here, variegated color. I really love it. I finished the second sock just the other day, and it's a top-down construction. So started off with, let's see, top-down construction, started off with a 2x2 rib, then knit the leg, and both socks have a slightly different heel construction. So the first sock I did has a general heel flap and gusset with just a short row little heel turn there. The second sock I decided to experiment, and I did the strong heel construction from Charlene Church's book, The Sock Knitter's Handbook. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, The Sock Knitter's Handbook. And this is the first time that I've made this heel, and it kind of, I won't lie, it kind of threw me for a loop a little bit because it fits differently than the heel flap and gusset. And it actually made, did it make? Yeah, like it made my sock leg significantly longer. Like you can, look how much longer it is. And I think it's because with the heel flap and gusset, I have a pretty good understanding of the construction of a sock with a heel flap and gusset, when to start the heel flap and all that stuff, and where things are going to sit. With the strong heel construction, because it starts off with knitting the gusset first, and then you do short rows to eat up those extra stitches. So then your heel comes to like a tiny little point on the bottom. So I didn't quite understand how long that was going to make the leg, or exactly how it was going to fit, and I just went with it. And so yeah, I accidentally made this sock leg a lot longer than I had originally intended, but that's fine. And the sock does fit well. I don't think, in my opinion, for my feet, and I have a very narrow foot, and with an incredibly high arch and narrow heels and really skinny ankles. So I have kind of difficult to fit, annoying, weird bird feet. And I find the heel flap and gusset is really great for my foot in that way, but I just hate picking up stitches, because like, that's like the one downside with the heel flap and gusset sock, is you have to pick up the stitches along the heel flap, and there are too many opportunities to create holes and gaps. So that's why I like this one, because there's no holes, there's nothing. Focus. There's no holes or anything. It looks great. But I'm a little concerned. I'm a little concerned about how well the heel is actually going to wear, and I'm wondering if there might be a way to, like, if I do this again, to put in textured stitches or slip stitches within and make a faux heel flap there. I wonder if that would work. I don't know, something to think about for another time. I did knit these on my, where did they go? They're right here. on my Chiaogu interchangeable minis. They're the really skinny, really short, you can see there, I don't know if you can kind of see how small they are, like 9-inch circulars, where I use one big needle and one short needle with them. So that's my little tip with using these 9-inch circulars, is as long as you have one tip that's long enough for your dominant hand to hold on to, I find using the little tiny baby nubbin of a needle is a little easier to manage. Anyway, I had a great deal of fun knitting these socks on these needles, and I'm really looking forward to knitting more. I don't think that I can knit patterned socks necessarily using these small circulars right now. I find purling really annoying and quite difficult to do with these, just because the dexterity in my fingers is not what it used to be, so it's just a little much to manage. Anyway, I really love this yarn. I have enough left over, I think, to do like cups and toes, maybe heels or something on another pair of socks, which is really exciting. So yeah, number 1. Okay, put that back in the podcasting bowl right there. And the next finished object I have was actually a work in progress in the last episode, but I ended up ripping it out, and I think I talked about this in the last episode too. I ended up ripping it out and then starting it all over again. And let me find it. Here we go. And I haven't blocked this yet. I need to block it. But it is a toque that's been made with my own handspun that I made with the Tour de Fleece. So here we go. This is a, let me pop it up, reverse stockinette, kind of like welted, a little bit, I guess it's a little bit welted, just little toque. I'm not going to put it on my head because I have this like headband on and I don't really want to ruin things. I could put it, I have styrofoam heads around, but I know people get freaked out by styrofoam heads, so I don't want to surprise you with a styrofoam head. This is it, the way that I knit it looked like this. So there were panels of stockinette matched by two ridges of reverse stockinette in order to get that kind of welting action when I flipped it inside out. And this inside out, the idea is that it is reversible. It is reversible, but I'm probably just going to wear it like with the wrong side out, and I really, really enjoy it. This yarn is lovely, has been so lovely to work with, and it was basically all I did when we were on our trip in Edmonton, and yeah, it was a really good travel project in that way because it wasn't so small and I didn't have to really worry about fiddling around with too much, and yeah, I'm really pleased with it. The yarn, oh, I should have got that. I ended up making got three skeins from the 2 braids of fiber that I had. The fiber comes from Sea Turtle Fibre Arts, and it's a one-of-a-kind color. So this was the other skein that I had. So I ended up knitting this on, I think, a 4mm needle. Did I do that? Or 4.5? Yeah, so like it ended up being like a bit like a worsted weight yarn. I think I did it on a 4.5. And it knits up really, really well. It kind of like knits up a little bit striped or ombre a little bit, which is really fun. So I have 2 more skeins. I have this one, and then I have the other one that's more of a purple one. that all came from the same braid. And I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do with the rest of it. Maybe I'll make another hat. I don't know. We'll see. But that's finished object number 2, guys. I have 2 finished objects. Amazing. Yeah. Okay. So the next thing I want to share with you is a work in progress. After finishing those 2 projects, I kind of felt like, oh yeah, you know, I finished something, finally. And I decided to pick up a languishing whip. And this one's currently living inside this project bag by Knitty Pie, who is Karina, and she is local to me. I got this bag from the Fiber Shindig last fall. I never go to fiber events like that because usually they take place on Saturdays, and I work every weekend typically. Monday seems to be like my Saturday, like when everybody else is working. But anyway, I really like this one. I splurged on this one because it had library books all over it, and the interior fabric is all library cards, like the library punch cards, which is really cute. So in here, I really love this project bag because it has, I should tell you, it has this little like snap. There's a little snap right there, and that's a yarn leader. And I didn't think I would ever use it, but I actually, I had another project in here recently, and I found the ball was like moving around too much in the bag, and I used the little snap thing to help guide the yarn through, and it helped so much. So little things are really great. So the project that's living in here is my Mount Pleasant shawl by Megan Nodecker, who is one half of the design duo Pip and Pin. And Megan also has a podcast, which is really awesome. You should all check it out. And that's the Pip and Pin podcast. I will link it down below in the show notes. She is currently working on a couple of really beautiful new designs. She has a tee that just came out. I think it's about to be released. It's absolutely beautiful. And then there's a sweater version of it. And she also has a collection of patterns that are coming up being published. So Pip and Pin is publishing a new pattern design book, which is going to be really awesome. And yeah, I encourage you to check her out and check her podcast out. But this this pattern I'm actually wearing. Let me just put it here. The Mount Pleasant tee, and I'll stand up and so you can just see it a little bit. It is really cropped, which is really great because my pants come up really high. I'm wearing a skirt, and all of my skirts and everything come like a good 3 inches above my belly button, which means I can wear little cute tops like this all the time. I really love the Mount Pleasant tee. I made this one last year, and I really love it. And you can kind of tell I'm in love with this sort of neon yellow chartreuse green. Because it matches my nails, although I have nail polish that fell off 2 fingers. So anyway, that's the Mount Pleasant tee, and it's knit from the bottom up. Starting off with a little bit of sort of little scalloped lace, like a little feather and fanish, but not quite, on the bottom, and then you work your way up. You split for the front and the back once you get to the armholes. And then it's a really simple construction. I think probably the hardest part is maybe just being diligent to pick up the stitches around here and around the arms is probably like the most annoying thing. But I love this one, and this was just made with stash yarn, and I striped it, so they're like micro stripes the entire way. I decided to cast on for another one a while ago, and I had been knitting on it pretty diligently, and then I just kind of stepped away from it. And so now I've decided, no, you got to pick it back up. And I think the reason I stepped away from it was because my hands were bothering me, and knitting with fingering weight yarn is not the most enjoyable thing for me right now. I have to go in spurts, but anyway, this is going to be kind of awkward to show just because I'm in the middle of doing, I just finished the right front. Right there. I just finished doing the right front, and so now I have to do the left front and then put them on holders and then do the back, but at least here you get an idea of what's going on. So I'm pretty stoked about this. The colors that I'm using, the bottom color here where the lace is, that is Fiber for the People in Taylor's Favorite, which is a like 80-20 I think, merino nylon. And the colorway is Hypercolor Shirt, which I think she just recently added more of that colorway in her shop recently. But anyway, so Hypercolor Shirt on the bottom. The main color is done in Madeline Tosh Sock, and the colorway is Electric Rainbow. And I think the whole thing just reminds me of a Hypercolor t-shirt. I like the flecks of black through it all. It's kind of amazing. I think that this is going to be super amazing when it's done. So I'm going to be using the rest of the Hypercolor Shirt to do the trim, like on this one, like the ribbing around the neck and the ribbing around the sleeves, and hopefully I'll have enough. I know I had used the yarn in something else, so I don't have a full skein, but hopefully I'll have enough. And I find it goes really well together. So I'm hoping, the plan is to have this done by the end of the month so I can have it to wear in the fall, because even though it's cooler today, it has been a really hot, smoky, weird, dry summer. So wearing, even though these tops are pretty, for one thing, they're short, but they're also, they let a lot of air flow through. They're still wool and warm, so they'll be much better in the fall. And they are really work appropriate as long as I put on a little, like, tuck in a little undershirt or something underneath it, or if I wear it over. They're really great layering pieces for going over top some of my more flowy dresses. So that's really exciting. So that's currently in progress. Thought I'd give you an update on that. Now, aside from working on my Mount Pleasant tee and my Smocket shawl, which I'm not necessarily going to share with you today just because I haven't really done a lot of progress on it, so it doesn't really look like anything. But anyway, one of the things I have been doing is getting to know my stash again. So I don't know about you, but I have a pretty substantial stash that I have been accumulating yarn for probably, like, I think I have stuff in there that I think came from like 2002. Like, it's been a long, I have had yarn in my stash for a very, very long time. And people have given me stuff that's from a really long time ago too, and I'm just like, yeah, sure, I'll take it. And the result is that I have just so much yarn that I kind of stash away, squirrel away, put in bins and everything, and I don't necessarily know what I have and what I don't have. And a lot of that comes from doing a lot of, like, all the yarns I have that are left over from art projects that I had. So when I was in art college and just shortly after finishing my graduate degree in fine art, I had a couple of different exhibitions that I had and that required me to do large scale knitted sculpture. So I had a lot of yarn left over from that because I would buy things in bulk. And yeah, so I just have like these bins filled with, you know, generic colors of Briggs and Little Heritage and all this stuff, and definitely more than enough to make a like 10 sweaters type of thing. And I decided, instead of, you know, constantly going and being like, as someone who works in a yarn shop, being tempted to buy yarn all the time because I don't necessarily know what I have at home, so I just buy something new. I decided to sit down and go through my stash, because this is, I mentioned this in the previous episode, that the month of August is kind of my break period before I start school again. So I won't have any other time except for right now to go through all of my stash. And the other thing I've been doing is rescanning all of my stash too, because especially with my sock yarn, all of my fingering weight yarn, a long time ago I had this idea that I would cake them all up into 50-gram cakes so that they're ready to go, and I would, like, in theory, save time. Unfortunately, that has meant that I have these bins filled with cakes that, sure, it saves space by caking up your yarn, but I don't have an accurate understanding of exactly how much yarn I have. So I started rescanning everything, so using my Nitty Notty. So this guy, like, here. So this is a large Nitty Notty from Knit Picks. It's about 72 inches. It does 72-inch loops around. And I started sitting and rescanning all of my yarn. And some of the other yarns I had, I was reballing using my ball winder, but my ball winder has broken, which I'll get into in a second because it goes into like tool enhancement, I guess. And yeah, it's been an interesting exercise doing this, and I encourage any of you, I really do, I encourage any of you that has a substantial stash that you've been collecting for years and years and years, take the time to sit and look at it, rescan it, and organize it, because I can guarantee that there's going to be a giant box of yarn that you're not going to need anymore, that you can get rid of. And that's kind of where I'm going right now. My goal is to get rid of half of my stash. That's my goal. So it's it seems a little nuts, but that's what I want to do, because I just have too much. I just have too much. I have so much yarn, and there's no way that I'm going to be able to knit all of it. And especially having everything in cakes as well, that's not good for your yarn. So if you had, if you were like me, like past Susan, thinking it would be amazing to save time and to save space by scanning up a lot of your yarn and packing it away, just know that if you have your balls sitting there, if you have those yarn cakes sitting there for long periods of time, like I'm talking like years, so like if you hoard things away like I do for like 10 years or more, when you go to knit with that yarn, the amount of pressure that the yarn cake has put on your yarn by being wound so tightly, it will actually distort your yarn and affect the gauge of your yarn. And depending on the fiber that you have, even with 100% wool, it won't bounce back as easily as you think it will. So this exercise in sitting with my skeins and like unraveling projects as well, and finding projects that I need to get rid of, I'm learning more about my stash, appreciating how much stuff I already have, and it's reinforcing this notion that I do not need to get more. I do not need any more yarn right now. I have so much. So yeah, if you want a reality check, I suggest going through your stash, because, you know, I think about this might be a touchy subject, but I think I'm not out of turn in saying this when it comes to watching podcasts like this, and like when everybody does stash acquisitions and like new yarns that they get, and they might have like a big wall of yarn behind them. And, you know, number one, as someone on a limited income like I am, that can be pretty disheartening and discouraging and everything, to see people almost brag a little bit about their stash. And even though I know for the most part it's not necessarily bragging, people are just sharing the things that they picked up, and you know, that's always kind of really fun to see new yarns, especially from different dyers that I don't have access to. It is really fun. But what freaks me out a little, and this is just me overthinking things and projecting, I think it's a lot of projection on my part, when I watch a lot of podcasts and there's just so much acquisition, like it just, I don't know, and it makes me think about how we may collect things. If you are an anxious person like I am from time to time, I've dealt with anxiety my whole life, and I know that that's a lot of knitters, a lot of crafters are in the same boat. But you know, I need to organize my thoughts here. Sometimes that whole retail therapy, gathering up and collecting things, has this sort of like feeling, I think, that you have control over something. So I have control over buying yarn, and oh, the color, instant gratification, it makes you feel great. But actually what causes me like that, what would relieve my anxiety in some way, like going and treating myself to yarn, actually contributes to more anxiety when I get home, when a few days later I look at how much yarn I have and go, oh my God, why did I need that? I didn't need that. I don't need that. Why do I, you know, yeah, you don't. Anyway, am I like sounding a little off base here? I don't think I am, but I think people can really relate to that. Can you relate to that? Yeah. So if you are, you know, one of those people that buys a lot of yarn like I do, and I'm going to share with you actually yarn that I did purchase in Edmonton. So this is counter to, you know, everything I just said. You know, this podcast is nothing but filled with contradictions. Anyway, I know Ellie of Skein Deer Knits, very popular podcaster. I don't know if there are some of you that watch her. You probably have heard of her anyway. She's been recently on her podcast talking a lot about this notion of yarn snobbery and gatekeeping with yarn and stuff like that. And it's an interesting topic to talk about because, you know, I find, as someone who's lived within and worked within the knitting community for as long as I have, so probably since about 2002, you can probably, you probably know this, that the knitting community can get pretty freaking cliquey sometimes, and yeah, which is not cool. So yeah. This is a snob-free zone. I just want to let you know about that, because I will work with fancy yarn and I will acknowledge my privilege in using that yarn, and that the only way that I can afford a lot of the yarn that I have is because I work in a knitting shop and I get a discount, and that's the only way that I can afford it. Otherwise, I would not be able to, because, for instance, I'm going to show you, we're going to go into like new tools or things new to the stash. So things this whole point of going through my stash is to make room for other stuff to make me feel a little bit better about purchasing more yarn if I do, because, you know, I had this thing once with shoes where I was addicted to buying shoes, and we're talking like not cheap shoes, not like Payless shoes either, like I should have been. Like really nice shoes that I had no business purchasing. And I had a rule that I could not buy a pair of shoes unless I got rid of a pair of shoes. So they had to cancel themselves out in some way. So this is kind of what I'm doing with my yarn now. I cannot get new yarn unless I get rid of yarn. So yeah, I'm going to share with you 2 skeins that I purchased in Edmonton. And this is why I tend to shop at one shop only when I'm in Calgary, because, you know, I work there and the privileges of working there. And when I go and operate like a regular, you know, patron customer at a store, I really have to, I take a lot of time to decide whether or not I'm going to buy yarn. And I decided on these 2 skeins because I just envisioned what a cute little top I can make with them. They'll just live in my stash for a little bit until I decide exactly what I want to do with them. But they're unlike anything else I have in my stash. So that was another reason why I purchased it, because I don't have anything like it at all. But I picked it up at the Fibre Nook, and I will talk a little bit about that later at the end of the episode. Well, no, I'll talk about it now. So in Edmonton, there are only 2 knitting shops, I think, yarn shops in Edmonton, from as far as I can tell. There's River City Yarns, which is like the most popular one, and I know that that's pretty associated with the Grocery Girls podcast. I didn't go to that one because I wasn't necessarily as interested in going. I consider that like a really big store, and I think that a lot of the yarn that they have, we would have in Calgary, and so I was just trying to find something that's different. And this is the problem too with, I think, knitting shops, is they all bring in, like, at a certain point they're all bringing in the same stuff. So like everywhere has hedgehog now. It's not necessary, there's an oversaturation of hedgehog. So I'm not as thrilled to see hedgehog as I once was. But anyway, I went into the Fibre Nook, which is a new knitting store. I think they've only been open for about a year maybe. And it's a sweet little knitting shop run by some really lovely people. What I loved about that shop is immediately when I went in, it didn't feel pretentious. I felt welcome, and I spent a fair bit of time in there just looking at all of the yarns, kind of thinking, yeah, I'm gonna pick something up, but I don't know what. And I kept going back to these skeins, and there was a little basket filled with them. They're local to Edmonton yarns. It's a dyer that apparently lived, like, did not live that far away from the Fibre Nook. And it is eco-processed superwash wool, superwash merino, fingering weight, but it's kind of like a plump fingering weight, I would say. There's about 400 yards in the skein, and the colorway is logwood and madder, so it's been naturally dyed. And I'm going to hold it up here. It's by Ilex Everyday, and she is a dyer that does, she has a lot of naturally dyed stuff. I am in love with this skein. I bought 2 of them. And so I bought 2. 800 yards is plenty, I think, to make like a little crop top like this. So that's the reason I got it, and I love this yarn. There's something kind of, I've never worked with eco-processed superwash yarn. I never worked with this kind of yarn before, and it's kind of like, it's kind of crispy. Like, it's kind of crispy. I know that sounds a little bit weird, but I think it's because of the superwash treatment. Typically when other yarn, like in just a normal superwash treatment, it's the wool fibers have been coated in like essentially like a plastic, I'm pretty sure, and or they've been combed in such a way that, or like superwash method, they like get rid of the follicles type of thing that are on the hair, and they coat things in plastic, and yeah, that's why superwash yarn always feels so slick. This does not feel like that. Open up the skein here, and you can see it's gonna pool. It's gonna pool so nicely. I'm really into this. I can't wait to knit something with it. So I'm glad I picked this up because it was local, and I like supporting local people. And yeah, and the colorway is just beautiful. So I'm adding it to my fingering weight bin that I have, and we'll save, oops, I broke the label. And I'll save that yarn for another day. So that's pretty much the only thing that I purchased in Edmonton, were those skeins. I also got this little button, a little, I don't know if you can see it. It's a little enamel pin that says "Knit for Brains." Yeah, I thought it was kind of cute. They had another one that said "Yarn Snob," but I really don't like the term yarn snob. So, and I don't think that that's something to brag about, in all honesty. But anyway. So I had them both in my hands, and I was like, well, which one should I go with? And I'm like, I don't want to be walking around with something that says I'm a snob. Like, ugh, that's not very inclusive. But knit for brains is kind of funny. So, and that's pretty accurate to the way my brain works. So yeah, there's always knitting in there. Anyway, so it was that, these skeins and this pin were all I picked up at the Fiberneck, and I cannot recommend enough. If you find yourself in Edmonton, check out the Fiberneck. They have some really lovely things there, and the people are fantastic, and yeah, can't speak highly enough of the Fiberneck. So that brings me to the next part of the podcast, where I want to talk about a small acquisition I made yesterday that was pretty impulsive. I was teaching yesterday, and I was teaching a yarn painting class, which was super fun. And we ended up doing some really amazing things in that class. But anyway, that's a story for another time. It's been a little while since I've been in the yarn shop, which is Stash. I work at Stash Lounge here in Calgary. And I was like wandering around looking at the store to see what was new. Excuse me. And saw that they had a new, like the full needle sizes of the Oxford punch needles. And where'd it go? Picked up one right here. So I have been waiting to get an Oxford punch needle for a long time. And the only ones that they had at Stash for the longest time were just the bigger sizes that were meant for using actual thick, bulky rug yarn. And I don't have any of that yarn. The only kind of yarns that I have at home that I have been using for rug hooking, like traditional rug hooking for the last like 10 years type of thing, has been worsted weight. I usually use worsted weight yarn for all of my rug hooking. And the exercise of going through my stash and everything, I decided that I have a lot of things saved of just little bits and bobs, like little bits and bobs like this, right? Like messy little cakes that I'm not going to do anything with. And instead of like A, throwing them out, or B, giving them away, I'm like, well, I could rug hook them, but I'm not going to have time to do rug hooking right now, and it would be really cool if I had a punch needle to try that, because I've seen it's pretty it's pretty fast compared to traditional rug hooking. And when I saw that Stash had the Oxford punch needles in the smaller sizes, this is the number 13. I'll take it out of its box. It looks like this. This is the number 13. It's considered the mini. It's a fine point, and it has a little leader eyelet on it right there. So I bought it thinking, having never used it, they do offer rug punch or needle punch workshops at Stash, but one of the things I know about myself is that in a workshop situation, I'm really good at leading workshops, but I'm a terrible student, so I don't pay attention, and I get really impatient, and I am always like, oh, I think I know how to do that, and I just always jump ahead when I shouldn't. So I am definitely a self-learner in that way. So I picked this up, watched a couple of videos on YouTube. So there are some tutorial videos from Amy Oxford, who is the inventor of the Oxford punch needle. And I went on YouTube, watched a couple of her videos to get the basics of how to work the needle, because the one time I did try it, I was trying to maneuver it like I would use a normal hooked rug hooking hook. I'll show the difference. Give me a second here. So I will show you the differences between a traditional rug hook and the punch needle right here. So this is usually my preferred rug hooking hook. It's basically basically like a crochet hook, if you can see that, with a short stubby handle. So the handle should, in theory, fit into the base of your hand, like the palm of your hand, as you're hooking, or you hold it pretty tight, like pretty close like that. This one has an ergonomic, like kind of foam handle. That this thing's kind of old, so the foam is not as forgiving as it used to be. It's a little tough. There are other versions. This is another really traditional version. This is a Joan Moshimer hook, and it's from Maine. I'll show there. So again, another traditional hook where you have basically like a crochet hook, and inside the handle, the base is really small, so the idea is that it kind of sits in your hand. Another version is like a pencil style. This is probably as close to the punch needle in terms of how you hold it. So you would hold it like with your, I'm just gonna hold it up there. So this one is one I picked up in Nova Scotia, and I've used it a little bit. It's meant, because the hook is really small, so it's would be really great for, I think, using fingering weight yarns to rug hook with. But these are different in that the punch needle does not have a hook on it. The punch needle does not have a hook on it. Rather, it has a hollow shaft with a hole through the center. And the idea being, with traditional rug hooking, it's a two-handed affair. So you would have your linen stretched or your burlap stretched. You'd have your design on the right side. You would have your hook on the right side. Then you would hold the yarn underneath, like a yarn strip or a fabric strip underneath with your left hand or your non-dominant hand, and you would be picking up, using that hook to go through the hole of the burlap and pull up the yarn, almost like you're making little loops. And you're keeping tension and running and like basically controlling the yarn with your left hand underneath the burlap. And then you can control how high of a pile you want to make, how high of a loop you want to make by using the hook and pulling it up. And it's pretty, like, it's not a fast thing. Like, I think some people can get pretty quick at it. That's how I've done all of my rug hooking. And I have a lot of rug hooking. Where's one of them? I don't know where, it doesn't matter. I have a lot of hooked rugs and that are done in that way. What entices me about punch needle is that punch needle is completely one-handed. So you're doing it in the reverse. So instead of having the loopy side facing you, like always working on the loop side, so the right side, with punch needle you're working on the wrong side. So it's kind of cool, and you don't have to be working with strips of fabric or strips of yarn. You thread straight from the ball into the punch needle, and then you're just like punch, 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 and go into town. The trick though with it is, and this is what some of the videos from Amy Oxford talks about, and which when I had tried doing this initially when Stash first got these punch needles, I couldn't quite do it because I was operating in the same way that I would do a traditional rug hook, where I would like pull my needle a fair bit out, or pull the hook away and out to create a bigger loop, and then push it back down and way and out and push it back down. With this, you're not supposed to lift it up. You run it across each hole in the burlap, and you poke it down entirely till it gets to the base of the shaft, and then you pull it up and then move it, just like drag it against the surface of the burlap and push it down again, pull it up so it's just up, like still touching. You're not lifting the tip of the needle away at all. It all has to remain connected. So you're basically making this long running stitch with a slight loop in it. The result is, so I got this yesterday, and I have this sitting on my like lap frame. You can kind of see here, this is a rug hooking lap frame that I've had for a long time. And the result of me just doing this, starting this last night and staying up until 2 a.m. because I couldn't stop doing it because it's so bloody addictive, is this. So this is what I have so far. This is the wrong side. So the pile on here, there's no pile at all. It should be fairly flat. It's just, and it should resemble kind of like a running stitch a little bit. I'm still trying to get my tension right, so it is a little loopy in some ways. I'm gonna take it off. Okay, so this is the right side. And now excuse this because I had done something else on the design on the front of it. So yeah, it doesn't make much sense. This is what it looks like from the right side. The pile is it's pretty short, and it's really, really sturdy. It's amazingly sturdy. The idea, because I finished one end, I'm going to be hemming it, and so it'll be just like a little rectangle type of thing. I'm so pleased with this process. You can see a bit more. This is the back side again. And you can see the back side doesn't, well, the back side shouldn't stick up that much, but again, I'm still learning this technique and trying to train my old technique out of my hands. But yeah, I'm really thrilled. I'm really thrilled with rug punching. I'm just using the yarn that I'm using. I have to go in and trim a lot of this stuff. The yarn that I'm using is all acrylic yarn. So it's acrylic worsted yarn, uptown worsted. I'm just using up this weird amount of scraps that I have because I don't think I would be knitting with it anyway. Like, I had bought a lot of this yarn because I was doing a lot of market knitting, and I was knitting colorway hats and stuff with acrylic yarn, which seems kind of nuts, but it actually works quite well. So I just have all this extra stuff, and I don't plan on knitting any more hats with it. So I'm like, what the hell am I going to do with the rest of it? So rug hooking, yay! I'm loving how dense the fabric is. I haven't been able to make a hooked rug as dense as this ever in my life. So I'm pretty thrilled. I'm excited to get more complex with my patterns. So far I'm just experimenting with filling in just really simple shapes. And I'm gonna figure out how to do, like, how I'm going to approach doing text and different actual images, like illustrations and stuff on there too eventually. But for the time being, this is going exquisitely well. And what's really cool, what's really cool, is literally how fast it is. It's such an efficient way of working, because if you've done any rug hooking at all, you know that you have to work in strips, and so there are lots of ends to trim. With needle punch, you're just working with one really long strip. You don't have to cut it, which is really amazing. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I'm really excited about all of it, and I'm probably going to finish this like immediately after the podcast when I'm editing everything. I think while everything is rendering, I'm going to finish this up, and it's going to be amazing. Yay! And now that brings us to the end of the episode. I'm playing a little bit of battery chicken right now. That's the one downside of using my SLR, is that the battery life is not as good as my other camera, but my other camera overheats, and you can never win. Oh my god. Anyhow, yeah, this is the end of the episode. What I'm going to show at the very end of this episode is a little bit of footage from our trip to Edmonton. I didn't actually get to take a lot of footage while we were away. We weren't there for too long, and it rained a lot, and I had thought I was going to go for like a nice long walk through the river valley and everything, but that didn't end up happening. So I have some footage, and yeah, so I'll share that with you. Anyway, I'm looking forward to going back to Edmonton in the future. It'll be really great, and to spend more time there. And yeah, it was really fun. And it was a nice break to have as soon as finishing the semester, and a nice break from work. And yeah, I have just a couple of weeks left now before I start school again, and I am working pretty much every day. I'm trying to pick up as many shifts at the library as I can, because I have tuition due at the end of September, so I gotta pay for that. And yeah, I'm looking forward for the rest of this week to needle punch and hopefully get some sewing on. I haven't done any sewing yet, but I'm hoping to get some sewing in and some knitting in and all that stuff. But yeah, I want to thank you for sticking out with this longer than usual episode, and I hope you found something here that you could connect with. And if you like this video, feel free to subscribe so you can be updated on new videos when they come up. Give it a thumbs up, because that lets me know that you're watching and all that jazz. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, everybody. We'll talk again soon. Bye!